So we're going to try a flipped lesson. So please write this in your notebook, 1.5, dividing integers. So the quotient of two integers, remember the word quotient means division. So if we have same signs, we have a positive integer as our final answer. And if we have two negative signs, we also have a positive integer as our final answer, just like we did when we did multiplication. So this is really the same thing, but just now using it for division. So remember, if your signs are different, your final answer, your final integer will be a negative. So write all these examples down in your notebook. Notice where you have the negatives and the positives. If you need to, you can pause the video while you write it all down and then move on. So again, notice here you have positive integers, you have a positive final integer. Here you have two negative integers, but the signs are the same, so your final integer is positive. Then if we look here, we have opposite or different signs, so we have a negative and a positive, so our final integer is a negative. Here we have a positive and a negative, so your final integer is also a negative. So again, write this all down in your notes. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on. So here we have example 1, and we're going to practice dividing integers with the same sign. So if 16 divided by 4, they're both positive integers, so my final integer is also a positive. Here I have two negative integers, negative 32 divided by negative 4, and my final answer is a positive integer because remember, the opposite of negative is always positive. Write this all down in your notes. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on. Here we have another example. Now these both show different signs. So if you notice, I have a positive 63 divided by a negative 7. My signs are different, therefore my overall sign is a negative. I have nothing to get rid of this negative here, so my final integer has to be negative. Doesn't matter where your negative is. Here I have negative 56 divided by positive 8. I still have an overall negative 7 integer. So go ahead and write this in your notes. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on. So now you're going to do some on your own. So you're going to write all of these down in your notebook, leaving enough space in between to give answers. So solve these in your notebook, and then when you are ready, you're going to insert the answers in the text box on the right, and then move to the next part of the video when you're ready. So go ahead and pause the video. When you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on. Here are the answers. So go back and check your answers in your notebook to see if you have the same answers that I have, and I will see what your answers are inserted into the text box on the right. Okay, here we have another example. So go ahead and copy this down. So pause the video, copy this down, and then we're going to talk about it step by step. Okay, so we're going to start with this first expression here, x minus 8 over y squared. So we're going to plug in for our x value. We're going to plug in a 4. 8 is 8. And then for the y value, you're going to use 2. So we've plugged in a 2 here, and that's squared. So then we're going to follow PEMDAS. So 4 minus 8. So we get a negative 4 on the top of our equation. And then 2 squared is 4. And then if I take negative 4 divided by 4, I get a negative 1 because I have opposite signs. Therefore, my final answer should be a negative. So make sure that's all in your notes. If you have a question, go ahead and ask a question or write a note down, and we can go over that tomorrow during class. Now you have some more to do on your own, so you're going to write these down in your notebook. You're going to solve them, and then when you're ready, you're going to write the answers on the text box on the right. So notice for all of these, A equals a negative 18, so make sure you notice that that is negative 18, and B equals negative 6. So plug those in. So I'm going to show you the first one, number 7. You're going to have negative 18 divided by negative 6, and you're going to give me an answer. So evaluate whether you should have a negative or positive integer as your final answer. Go ahead and pause the video. When you're ready to move on, first enter all of your answers to the text box on the right, and then move on. Here are the answers for on your own. Double check to make sure I did the work correctly. Check your answers in your notebook. If you got one of them wrong, please go ahead and mark it wrong. If you can correct it, go ahead and correct it. If you can't, that would be something great for us to go over tomorrow during class. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause the video. If you need to write a little question on the side, say, I don't understand, or write a question in your notebook so we can go over those. All right, word problem. So let's look at this word problem. You don't need to copy this down. Just copy down example 4, word problem. And let's look at this. The morning high tide at a beach is 56 inches. It's a positive. 6 hours later, the afternoon low tide is 12 inches. What is the mean hourly change in the height? So remember, mean is kind of the average height change. So here's where we started. Here's where we ended. So the difference is 45. But that took 6 hours to happen. So you're going to take that change in inches, 45, divided by the 6. So your tide changed 6 inches each hour. So now was your tide going up or was your tide going down? So let's look. We had a high tide going down to a low tide. So we're going to put a negative out front to show that it actually decreased 7.5 inches each hour. So go ahead, pause your notebook or pause the video. I need you now to write all this down and then unpause the video to go to the next question. Okay, so you're going to do one on your own. So you're going to look at this. You're probably going to need to pause the video. So on your own, the height of the tide at the Bay of Fundy in New Brunswick decreases 36 feet in 6 hours. What is the mean hourly change in height? So in your notebook, write the equation to solve that. So I should see an equation. And then I should see your final answer. And then should your final answer be a positive or a negative? When you have your answer, go ahead and write it in the text box on the right. Okay, so here is my answer to that question, and I said it was negative 36 feet. Notice that feet each hour, because it's going from, well, we're decreasing. So we know it's a negative. Think about that. Think about how much that decreases 6 feet each hour. So notice the boats in my picture. That is the end of our lecture. So we are ready now to solve some math problems.